Morning, one and all. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar, Tourism and Rural Development. I now welcome our Chairman and Secretary, Indian Academy Education Trust in absentia, our Chief Operating Officer in absentia, and our beloved Principal, Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous, faculty members, participants, and all my dear students. So every year, the 27th September, we are celebrating World Tourism Day. So in this year, it's fallen Sunday. Because of that reason, we didn't celebrate the World Tourism Day. So we are organizing the webinar on the celebrations of 9th World Tourism Day, the Department of Tourism Studies, Indian Academy Degree College. And for this webinar, we have invited the speaker for the day. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the resource person for the day, Dr. Ravish Matthew. Sir is credited with an outstanding academic profile with dual master degrees and PhD in tourism studies from Central University. Sir is having 10 years of teaching experience and 2.5 years of postdoctoral research experience. And sir is also awarded with many awards. And one of the prestigious award, which is Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan Postdoctoral Fellow in Tourism Studies by the UGC. And sir is having also more than 20 publications in his books and also UGC peer-reviewed journals. Sir is currently working as an assistant professor from Sri Sri University, Cuttack. So I welcome you, sir, for our webinar. Thank you for accepting our invitation and presenting for our webinar. Thank you, sir. So I hand over the session to the speaker. Thank you, sir.
Mukund sir, can I start the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can start. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You are audible. You are audible. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. A very warm good evening to one and all present for this one-day webinar. At the outset, let me thank the management for giving me a golden opportunity to be a part of this World Tourism Day celebration, which is a one-year-long World Tourism Day celebration. And we have just completed September 27 World Tourism Day on a very particular theme, tourism and rural development. So at the outset, my heart goes out for the management of the college for giving me a golden opportunity to be a part as a speaker for this webinar. My special thanks goes to the Department of Tourism Studies faculty, Mr. Mukund, for giving me this chance, and I also thank the other faculty members in the department, Professor Shilpa and Professor Krishna Priya, for giving me this opportunity. And I also thank my colleague in the department, Dr. Samantha, for helping me with this webinar. So thank you so much, and it was a great privilege talking to this particular academic institution in Bengaluru. Okay, so as we all know that this particular World Tourism Day, which has just happened, it has happened amidst of pandemic, that is the novel coronavirus which is going on. So UNWTO has taken a very crucial step of coming up with such a very important topic called tourism and rural development, where the UNWTO Secretary General Zurab Pololi-Kashvili has very clearly told that how rural tourism can help rural communities and how it can hold on to their unique natural and cultural heritage, and as well as supporting conservation projects and including those safeguarding endangered species, and which will bring back the lost traditions or flavors of different countries. So this particular World Tourism Day is special in many ways. This time we are celebrating our 40th World Tourism Day celebration, and more importantly, UNWTO has not given a particular country as a status for this particular World Tourism Day celebration. Rather than this time, UNWTO have given a cross-border cooperation of Mercosur nations like Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile as the observer status for this particular World Tourism Day. This World Tourism Day is also a mark of the international solidarity that different countries gives between each other, so that tourism, being one of the robust child of globalization, will be thriving much better, and it will come out of the loss that this particular industry has faced within these last 8 to 9 months. So UNWTO, being the spearheading organization for playing a pivotal role in providing all the supports for tourism, this particular World Tourism Day has many role to play in the coming future. I would like to go back to the subject directly, where we talk about different types of, we have different types of tourism, where we know that basically when we discuss tourism, we have mass tourism and alternative tourism. But the current, after the pandemic, we see that the mass tourism activity to come up or to thrive back will take some time. And now, as of now, mass tourism has taken a back seat. So we see that in coming days, alternative tourism will be much in demand, and rural tourism is one of the form of alternative tourism, and which has which is going to play a very important role in tourism industry, in tourism scenario in the coming days. So as we see that rural tourism is something, if when we read the literature as a researcher, I would like to say that when we see go through the literature, we will find that rural tourism dates back to the Romanticism movement, which began in the 18th century, and it has been developed as a counter to industrialism, which began in natural world. So when we see that, when we see the growth of rural tourism as a whole, we see that modern rural tourism, which has come up, has begun after World War II, which has been very clearly quoted by Lane 2009 in one of the research papers written by him on rural tourism. So this particular movement influenced the development of rural tourism from tourism side, that is the demand side, and organized side, that is the supply side. So when we are offering a service, there should be both a demand and a supply side for both the things. So as we see, when we go through the literature, we see that looking at the devastating effect of mass tourism in the 21st century, people are looking for more scenic, serene, sublime, and people are more into novelty seeking to a destination. As now pandemic very clearly says about social distancing and what they called being away from clumsy places, it's better that why can't we go to pristine natural beauty? Why can't we go back to nature? And we need to go to places where we get fresh oxygen, where everything is natural, everything is organic, where people would like to spend more time in that sort of a scenario, that sort of a setup people would like to prefer in these coming days. People are, as I was telling, that people are more into novelty seeking. Novelty seeking is something where you have a loyalty towards a particular place to go back to that particular place again and again. So that destination will allure you to come back to that destination again and again, so that there is a emotional connection of tourist with that particular place. Okay, so there is a psychological attachment towards a particular place for some people. Some people have a very psychological attachment towards Darjeeling or Ooty or Manali, Shimla. Maybe it depends from people to people. So it's all about novelty seeking and escaping from daily routines or monotonous life of today's hustle and bustle of life, and it's going for in search of natural surroundings and taking more personal as well as authentic experience rather than a standard holidays provided by mass tourism. So in a mass tourism, what happens? We book a hotel, we take a taxi from the airport, and we go to the hotel and we are closed. So we see that the contact with the front office, contact with housekeeping, everything has got its own limitations. Services are provided, but there is something, there is some gap that we see in tourism service. But when we come to a pristine beauty, you see that whatever a smile that you get back is a very particular original smile. Okay, you mingle with people. Okay, so there is a host guest interaction. Okay, so but on a caption way, I would like to say that whenever you are doing some rural tourism activity anywhere or starting a rural project anywhere, it should have that sustainable aspect in it, which is very, very important. So again, I would like to go to the literature. When I was going through it, I saw that according to Nultree in the year 2004, industrialization, urbanization has given a good improvement in transportation in basically in Western societies, and have directed people who search for different experience in rural areas. Like, you know, in foreign countries, we have caravan sort of vehicles which are quite popular, and on weekends people just pack their food and take some packed food and just get into caravan and go to some a forest or countryside and go and just spend some beautiful time there. So that itself gives them a very cool feeling that okay, their weekend has been well spent, and they are just away from their monotonous life. So these sort of experience are going to be promoted in these coming days. Nowadays, people will be start using their own personal vehicles. It may be two-wheeler or four-wheeler, just to go out, just for a leisure, a long drive. So this sort of long drive, that too not into clumsy roads and heavy traffics. So maybe a long ride to the countryside, to the pristine beauty of villages, or a orchard or a vineyard. So these sort of things. So again, now we see that tourists are more into tailor-made packages. So tourists has got their own preference. They want that, okay, we prefer villages, we would like to visit a winery, we would like to go for some volunteer tourism activity, we would like to go for some indigenous tourism activity, endogenous tourism activity. So nowadays we see that coming days, we see that tourists will be more into a tailor-made. Tourists will be preferring more of these tailor-made experiences, which are very, very important. So it has been pointed out that when we see the Plog's psychographic model in tourism, we see that there are different types of travelers who are, some tourists are very intellectual curious, some are risk takers, some are experiential tourists, some are explorers. So in that way, we see that people coming to rural tourism destination or ecotourism destination, rural tourism destination, farm tourism destination, are experiential seekers. When they come to a particular destination, they learn something from that destination rather than just going to that place, taking some photographs and coming back. So we say in our in alternative tourism, we say that whenever you come to a destination, you learn something. It should be a experiential learning experience for you. You should learn something. For example, a tourist visiting a ecotourism destination should learn about the names of the birds, names of trees, names of the butterflies, and gain some first-hand experience. So when he goes back, he need to go a bit enlightened. That is what is more that is what the aim of alternative tourism, where you are not as a tourist, where rather than you are into an experiential learning, you spend your time with the local community there, and you are becoming one among them, so that you can mingle more easily and you can learn more things from them. That is what. So some of the traditional activities such as horse riding, bird watching, and adventure activities, kayaking, snowboarding, windsurfing. So these are type of activities which are going to be very, very popular. And this type of tourism, we in tourism term, we call it as the equestrian tourism, which are quite popular nowadays. Like, for example, people are very much interested to go for an angling or a game fishing, which are quite popular. People like to go for a game fishing in Canada or Australia. So this type of like horse riding, bird watching, butterfly watching, to study about orchards. So these are some of the activities which normally we call it as a equestrian tourism activity in tourism parlance. So moreover, we see that post-Fordism and farm diversification, rural entrepreneurship, and especially women entrepreneurship also have important role in the development improvement of rural tourism. We see that whenever we study about rural tourism, role of women in rural tourism is a very important term, which is quite being repeatedly seen in literature. When we see the review of literature, when we study the subject more deeply, so we see that whenever a rural project is being set up, say, woman has a big role to play. So it may be the handicrafts, it may be the agriculture products, it may be the food. So everything is connected to women. So so women folk has a very big role to play whenever there is a rural development coming up in any place. So when we talk about when we see the genesis of the term rural tourism, we go back to Bernard Lane's first attempt in his publication, which is called What is Rural Tourism, which you call it to define and clarify rural tourism as a tourism type which can be seen as a groundbreaking study for rural tourism. So basically, people, those who do research on rural tourism, basically they go for Bernard Lane's book, What is Rural Tourism, to get a clear idea on what actually is the aim and objective of coming up with a concept called rural tourism. So again, according to Lane, in the year 2009, it has been purely told that rural tourism is defined as a tourism type which is located in rural areas. So many places, what happens nowadays, we have artificial lakes, we have artificial waves, we have artificial villages coming up in many places. But when we talk about rural tourism, you cannot make a rural tourism setup somewhere in a urban area or a semi-urban area, and you cannot tell that we are having a rural tourism project. So rural activities, rurality, we are going for a feel, we are going for a ambience, we are going for a change of ambience, which need to be very clearly seen in that particular rural tourism destination, which makes that place unique from different place. So we also see that the scale, the character, the whole ambience of the destination need to be very well clarified, as told by Sharpley and Roberts in their research studies. So if someone is talking about rural tourism, there are some few characteristics which need to be pointed out very clearly. One, first and foremost, is that the destination should be located in a rural area, and the second one is that it should be based on rural tourism features. Okay, so there are some typical rural features which need to come out of these rural tourism destinations. That there should be something which should attract the tourists to go to that particular place, so that people can go and learn many things or get themselves involved in that particular activity. You also see that there should be some building and settlements on small scale. So there should not be a rampant massive construction, or we cannot, if you are finding a concrete jungle in a rural area, then that cannot be called as a rural tourism destination. So rather it's a building and a settlement on a small scale, which is very, very important to attract tourists. You also need to see that when tourists go to a particular rural tourism destination, the tourists need to be connected with the local people and their families. But there is a small thing in that which we need to keep in mind, that when you are talking about connection with local people and families, we see that it's called host-guest relation. So there should be a very cordial host-guest relation, but we also need to respect their local culture, their indigenous culture, their totems and taboos, and all these things need to be taken into consideration very well. So if you need to go properly well dressed. Okay, it's not that you go wearing a jeans and a high heel, and the next day a girl from that particular tribe or a village girl start wearing or imitating that, okay, or aping that. That's what we call in tourism as that's what we call in tourism as we call it as we call it as a demonstration effect. We call it as a demonstration effect. Am I audible, Mukunda? Am I clear?
Hello.
Am I clear?
Your screen is not visible, sir.
I need to share it?
Yes.
One minute. Yeah, now it's shared. Now it's okay?
Yes, 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was talking about host-guest relation where...
yes, sir, now your screen is visible. You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So now that's what I was talking about, the host-guest relation. Like we talk about demonstration effect in tourism. Like if tourist is coming up with a particular dressing style, and if that is being imitated by the local people, then we call it as a demonstration effect. So that sort of things should not happen in a tourism destination when we are starting a rural tourism project. So that is very important. That is very, very important. We also see that people who come for rural tourism activity, there are a lot of activities related to, like some people in rural tourism, some people used to come for agri-tourism, a more specialized area in rural tourism, where they would like to study more on agriculture, farming and all these things. One such example is Israel, which is a very popular agri-tourism destination. In Pune is a agri-tourism destination. We also attract a lot of rural tourists for culinary tourism, or we call it as gastronomy tourism, because rural places are known for their own organic and ethnic foods. Moreover, we also see that rural tourism is also a place for outdoor recreation, production and sale of handicrafts, which also attracts a lot of tourists. So tourist comes with different motives. It may be agri-tourism, or it may be some may would have come for some outdoor recreation, for cuisines, different cuisines that is provided and all these things. So different types of activities takes place in a rural area. When we talk about, when we are analyzing the rural tourism definitions more clearly, we see that every researcher has something to say very, very special. So we see that Sharpley and Roberts has very clearly told about how it is a type of tourism which can really combat mass tourism, and how these particular a low impact tourism can be promoted through rural tourism. Actually, so now the tourism researchers, planners and academicians, they are planning that how we can reduce mass tourism, and how we can come with low impact tourism, which is very, very important. How we can even increase the carrying capacity of a place through alternative tourism, that is also been taken into consideration. A lot of discussions are going on. We also see that how some researchers says that how local people will be benefited from rural areas by providing services. So one of the major aim of providing service coming up with a model rural project in any destination is that how the local people will be benefited out of it badly.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry for the interruption. Can you make the slide full screen, sir? As many of the students, they are accessing through mobile, so
Also,
it might. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. So different researchers have given different views. So it will be very helpful from the slide that each researchers have told about rural tourism from different dimensions. So I have taken each point from it. So as you know that rural tourism is also an arena where tourists and farmers come together, and there can be exchange of indigenous knowledge. We call it as indigenous knowledge or endogenous knowledge. You know, these farmers, those who are doing organic farming and all, tourists, those who are really interested in farming, so they can come and take all sort of ideas from the farmers. That's what you call it as indigenous knowledge, which are nowadays being promoted very well. So again, we see that rural, some researchers says that a place which are sparsely populated and which are rich in cultural heritage and tradition. So when we when the government of India plans up a rural tourism destination, we normally see that whether they have some cultural heritage, they have some important monuments which is also being protected in the due course of time when the particular rural project is coming up in a tourism destination. And more importantly, tourism should also take place in countryside, and it should take pride in promoting tourism in countrysides. So we also see that there are many places where with the coming of these rural tourism projects, we see that there is an overall, there is a ripple effect in that area. So it's not only the village is coming up with a rural tourism project, but on the other hand, we also see that how the other, maybe the school or hospitals or the roads or the lighting of that place, maybe a transportation service. So all these things are also getting benefited very well by the process how rural tourism projects come up. So rural tourism has different dimensions in different countries. So I was just going through some of the countries and how each countries has got different ideas about rural tourism destinations. I was talking about Italy, and Italy being one of the most popular rural tourism destination, and agri-tourism is one of the important things that Italy offers to visitors who come for rural tourism activities in Italy. And Italy has a beautiful countryside, so people would rather like to go for agri-tourism and study about different types of fruits, vegetables, and all this which is grown in different seasons. When we come about Australia, you know, Australia has some of the best vineyards like Napa Valley and all these things, where people used to go and study about this on the farm tourism or wine tourism, which are quite popular. When we talk about USA, USA has been giving more importance to farm tourism, ecotourism, nature-based forms of tourism, which are, and adventure tourism, which are quite popular in USA. When we talk about Canada, we see that in Canada, people are more into game fishing, hunting, and other arts and culture and services which are provided to the people who normally visit USA. So when you talk about England, England has got some of the, you know, some of the best rural tourism destinations. We have in Scotland, Wales, where they have beautiful lakes, meadows, where you can see sheep rearing and all these things. Sheep rearing is also a very important activity which are popular in England. How the wool is been taken from the sheep and all, and how it has been processed and all this, all is an activity, a series of activity which tourists can enjoy when they are going to a particular place. So I was one of the important things that has been included in my topic for discussion was GI, that how geographical indication tag helps in rural tourism promotion. So as you know that geographical indication tag or is a sign used or a mark products item which have a very special geographical origin, and we all have come up in our day-to-day life that or when we are traveling to a particular place, we see that, you know, this place is famous for this thing, this place is famous for this clothes, this place is famous for this particular medicine. So actually this GI tag is something which is originated from a traditional method and qualities and materials. It may include food or agriculture products or wine or handicrafts. It may be industrial goods which are quite popular and which are confined to a particular place. You cannot do any sort of duplication in this. So that is what is very important. So in the year 2003, 15 September, geographical indication came into effect, and the first product that got a GI tag was the Darjeeling tea. So tea is produced all over the globe, but the Darjeeling tea which we used to get in West Bengal in a place called Darjeeling cannot be replaced by anyone, and you cannot sell it telling the same name called Darjeeling tea. For Darjeeling tea, you have to go to Darjeeling and buy that tea to say that I have got this particular Darjeeling tea from this particular place. So it has got that particular essence in it, that value or that geographical importance in it, that this particular product has been product comes from this particular place. So what accords and regulates geographical indication? So when we talk about different types of products which comes from different places. So, from where does this all come from? So geographical indications are covered as a component of intellectual property rights under the, we call it as the TRIPS, which we call it as, again, you have something called the World Intellectual Property Organization, which takes care of this particular whole process, that which product need to be given this particular GI status. And at international level, as I was telling, that World Trade Organization is the ultimate apex body which takes care of GI tag authentication. And in India, Geographical Indication Registration is administered by Geographical Indication and Geographical Protection Act 1999, which came into force from the year September 2003. So the first product that I was told that came into limelight was the Darjeeling tea in the year 2004-5. So we see that there are the intellectual property. It comes under intellectual property right. It comes under the there is an organization called TRIPS. We talk about there is another important organization called the WIPO, WIPO, which plays a major role in GI tagging, and you also have the apex body as the World Trade Organization, which also plays a very important role in giving this particular status for a product. So I have to give a better understanding. So just check the characteristics of GI tag. So a sign must identify a product as originating in a given place. So for a GI tag, there is a logo which is provided in that particular product to show that it has been given a geographical indication. The qualities, the distinct characteristics or the reputation of the product should be essential at the place of origin. So place of origin is very, very important when you're talking about geographical indicator. So you see that in a place, you are getting a particular type of rice. In a place, you are getting a particular type of sari. Okay, that place is very important. Okay, like for example, we talk about the Muga silk in Assam. Okay, or Pashchimi shawl of Kashmir. So it has got a name associated with it. Okay, or we talk about the Aramula metal mirror of Kerala. Okay, so everything has got a name associated with it, a state associated with it. So which makes this particular product distinct from other products. So you may be getting the same products everywhere, but the special maybe the rasgulla which is available in Odisha or Bengal, you may not get it at any place. Okay, maybe the rasgulla which is made out of the cottage cheese has got its own distinct flavor when you come and eat it in enjoy it in Bengal or Odisha. Okay, so there was a huge tug of war which was going on between Bengal and Odisha, that where does this rasgulla originate? Finally they came. Some told that Odisha is the birthplace of rasgulla. Why? Because it has got a long history of giving it as a prasad to in Puri Jagannath temple as an offering, as a mahabhog. Okay, so even there was a discussion from West Bengal that that how does our rasgulla is also quite popular, but finally maybe there is, with the small changes like Rasagulla of West Bengal and Rasgulla of Odisha, in that way it has been given a GI tag indication. Okay, so when we talk about GI tag, what are the advantages of what are the basic advantages that we get from this particular GI tag? So we see that protection of indigenous knowledge and community right is very, very important. We see that there are many ideas, there are many things which are confined to the local community, local people and indigenous people, and it has been carried from generation to generation. And it has not been done by a single day. It has been carried from generation to generation, and it has come through so many hard works. And a lot of people have been working behind it to get this particular indigenous knowledge. And so for that reason, that community rights should be there and their work should be respected. That is what where we talk about GI indication. That is protection of indigenous knowledge and community right is very important. We also talk about fair trade and fair competition. So in tourism, we see that there is a fair trade. We talk about fair trade in tourism. So when we talk about fair trade in tourism, we need to know that a person, one who is selling a handicraft, should get a fair trade, and there should be a proper flow of supply chain, and there should not be any monopoly in the market. So if there should be a fixed rate which should be decided by the government, and he or she should sell that particular product which comes under GI tag in that particular rate. We also talk about that market recognition and premium pricing. Being a GI tag, it gives a big boost to the product to be sold, and it also helps in tourism promotion. Whenever a tourist comes to a particular destination, we see that this particular product is being sold, and this particular product has been preferred by tourists from people coming from far and wide, and they used to these products used to sell as hot cakes. Why? Because when they go back, they want to say that we have got something as a souvenir from a place, and this particular for example, I will tell you a typical example like the walnut carving in Kashmir, okay, which is a very typical geographical tag where people used to go and buy it as souvenirs. Okay, so and this is also a key source of niche marketing. You know, niche marketing is something where all the peoples may not be that interested. Maybe the people, those who are really lovers of tea, they would like to go to Darjeeling. They would like to travel to Darjeeling and get this Darjeeling tea and come back. Okay, so those who are really love to eat sweets, they would like to go and eat sweets at the place where actually this sweet is being made. So it will add to a dual advantage of visiting that destination as well as tasting the product. So this is one. So I have few examples of GI tag products which I'd like to share with the students. Like as I was telling that Odisha is famous for its rasgulla, and equally West Bengal also has got a GI tag, and it comes under the foodstuffs. And when we talk about Tamil Nadu, you know, there is something called the Kodaikanal Malai Poond. Poond in Tamil is something which we call it as garlic. Okay, and we use garlic in all our cuisines. But why is that so special in Kodaikanal Malai Poond, and how it is distinct from other garlic which we used to get in other parts of India? So there is something in that climate, something in that weather, okay, and something in that particular air that gives that particular garlic a special flavor that has been highly sought after by people coming to Kodaikanal. And as you know, Kodaikanal is itself a beautiful hill station and queen of hill stations in Tamil Nadu. And people coming to Kodaikanal would rather like to take a few Malai Poond with them when they go back as souvenirs, or just to give it to some of their friends, and in that way. So let's going to northeast. We see that in Mizoram we have something called a Mizo Pouche, which is again a beautiful handicraft which has been made by North. And northeast is a place, you know, which you have got a lot of handicrafts, and a lot of handicrafts have come under GI tag. So if I start discussing about GI tag, there are so many items which are there in list. So I have taken some of the important things from all the different states so that I can bring it under one umbrella. So when we talk about Karnataka, you know, there's a place called Gulbarga where Tur Dal of Gulbarga is very, very famous. And people, Tur Dal is one of the important pulses which are highly used all over India. But Gulbarga Tur Dal is very, very special when it talk about GI tag. Kerala Aramula metal mirror, being in my district Pathanamthitta, from where I belong in Kerala, Aramula is just some 25 kilometers from my home, and Aramula metal mirror is a mystery which is not known to anyone in India, and it has been quite confined to few artisans staying in Aramula, and they used to, and no glass is used in making this mirror, and it is made out of a complex chemistry of tin, zinc, and brass and all, and they used to polish it in such a way that particular mastery is known to few people in Aramula. And you know, Aramula is also UNESCO World Heritage Village, and this metal mirror has been used by the kings and queens of Travancore. And till today, whenever we get a guest from anywhere in the world, we used to give souvenir as a metal mirror, Aramula metal mirror, to them to carry as a souvenir. So coming to down, we go Assam. You see that Chokua rice of Assam is very famous. Assam is a place which is blessed with a fertile valley of Brahmaputra, and we see that there are some 3,000 different species of rice in Assam. In Assam, we also have a rice research center, and there are so minute type of rice which are quite popular in Assam. And one of that is Chokua rice, which is quite popular in Assam and which is highly preferred by people. And it can be also, it is also sold as sample for tourists. Going to Ratnagiri, you know, Alfonsa mango is often we call mango as the king of fruits, but Alfonsa mango, which is available in Ratnagiri, is one of the unique. And you see that people just go and grab a cartoon of mangoes once the train stops in the station, or people when they go, and this particular Alfonsa mango is quite popular in Ratnagiri, and it has been preserved till today. And they say that one of the, if you are eating mango, you should eat Alfonsa mango. So in that way, people used to give credit to Alfonsa mangoes. When we talk about Goa, you know, there is something called Feni. Feni is a distilled wine which is made out of the fruit of cashew nut. I would like to tell it with a statutory warning that alcoholic consumption is injurious to health. But Goa, being a tourist-friendly place, Feni is one of the most important distilled product. Just like vodka in Russia is a very common drink which is distilled very commonly. So this is a manufactured product which is also having a GI tag. So which is not available anywhere. If you go to Coimbatore, you know, wet grinder is something which has a GI tag. Again, it's a manufactured product. As you know that Coimbatore, the whole of South India is quite famous for dosas and idlis and different types of breakfast. So, and wet grinder has a major role to play in this particular breakfast. So we see that Coimbatore is a place where wet grinder has got its own geographical indication tag. Coming to Kerala, again, you see that the Tirur betel leaf, or betel leaves are used for making eating in pan, and the Tirur betel leaves are very particular, and it has been high in demand, maybe because of its quality and the size of the leaf and the climate on which it is arised. It is a roast. So again, Tirur betel leaf is also a very popular GI tag agriculture product. Coming to Bangalore, you know, Bangalore is famous for its blue grapes, and again, it's an agriculture product. Gujarat, as you know, is a place of some of the parts of Gujarat, especially the Kutch area of Gujarat, is famous for different types of tribes, and Kutch embroidery is famous all over the world, which has got a GI tag in it. When you go to West Bengal, a place called Malda, which I put it in bracket, the Fazli mango, and in Malda, if you go, you can see that how processed mango can be tasted by people. It's not the fresh mango. You can get from the Fazli mango. Maybe they used to make mango cakes and put it in plastic, and they used to sell it everywhere. And even I've also got a chance to taste it. Okay, we call amsada, or in local term we call it as amsada. So coming to Kashmir, you know, it's the walnut wood carving, which is again a handicraft which is quite popular and which has got a geographical tag. Go to Maharashtra and go to Kolhapur, you know, Kolhapur jaggery. We have one of the product also like Kolhapur chappal. That is Kolhapuri chappal is also very, very popular. Like Kolhapuri jaggery is quite famous, and it's also an agriculture project. We see that jaggery is produced all over India, but what's that makes so special in Kolhapur? Maybe because of the soil quality and the climate quality, size of the sugar cane, color of the jaggery. Okay, that makes this particular product a GI tag. Coming to Andhra Pradesh, you know, there is Araku Valley. We know it's a hill station. And the coffee, or the Arabica coffee, which we used to get there, again has a geographical indication tag, and it's quite very, very common. And when you talk about Telangana, silver filigree of Karimnagar has a geographical tag. You know, the place from where I'm talking, Cuttack is also famous for silver filigree works, but I don't know whether they have got a geographical tag, but Telangana's silver filigree of Karimnagar has got a geographical tag. But when we talk about this is what India about, but when we talk about world as a whole, I would like to give you examples like the we call it about again I should say like Champagne. Champagne is a name of a place in France from where this particular champagne is being produced, and it has got a geographical tag. Okay, and you know, champagne is the only spirit which has been distilled in the bottle itself. Okay, and it is only opened. It is only been opened when the guest used to open it for it, and it is one of the renowned spirit for celebrations. So champagne is the name of the place from where this particular champagne has come up. Normally we think that it's a type of drink, but it is not the drink. It's the name of the place from where this particular drink has come. Okay, we talk about the Ethiopian coffee, which is quite popular all over the world, and Ethiopian coffees are one of the items which has got a geographical tag. Even we talk about the cocos from Ghana, which are very, very popular. You know, cocoa is a cash crop, and the seeds out of the cocoa we used to put it in all our chocolates and health drinks. We used to add cocoa, like the Vietnam glass, okay, or the Roquefort cheese. So these are all some of the international examples when we talk about geographical tag. So combining rural development and impacts of GI, I have after going through rural tourism literature and GI studying both, I have just combined it both, and some of the things that have come down is that first one is it gives the rural development and impact of GI. When we talk, we see that it gives a structured supply chain. So when a particular place is getting popular for a particular product, so that will lead to a structured supply chain in movement of these goods, and there will be a strict vigilance on this particular product. We also see that price enhancements of the product, but in a much stabilized manner. So there will be a specified cost which will be decided by the government and the local place, but you cannot go for you cannot hike your cost at your own will. So it should be in a stabilized manner. So goods get distributed throughout each and every level of supply chain. So that is again a very good sign of distribution of this particular GI. And in that way, I was talking about WIPO, and WIPO plays a major role in distribution of this sort of geographical products all over the world. Okay, so in that way, looking at the current globalization, we are able to send goods everywhere. So WIPO is one organization which helps in movement of GI tag products anywhere in the world. It also leads to preservation of natural resources, tradition, as well as traditional expertise. So that is again a very important thing. So we are able to keep the traditional expertise within our rural areas, so that rather than they leaving that job and going somewhere and doing some job. Okay, growth in tourism sector, it leads to growth in tourism sector. Destinations get promoted. So when we are talking about a geographical indication in a place, naturally that place will get a hike. That place is going to get promoted. That place will be in the tourism map of any state. Then we see that community participation increases in tourism activity because of rural tourism. When a rural tourism destination come up or a model come up, automatically people staying in and around that place will be naturally benefited. Okay, I can give you one example where there is a project called Chambok Ecotourism project in Indonesia, where that particular place was being previously been highly degraded by people by cutting trees and all these things. But after a NGO got engaged in it, people started a rural tourism project, and today people are getting a livelihood out of that project. People are involved in what they call bullock cart rides, or they used to take tourists for hiking, and they have started planting all the trees that they have cut and all. So this is how rural tourism activities or rural tourism projects can help in upbringing a destination which has already been lost. So again, I was talking about demand for product, facelift and brand value. So once you have a GI tag product in your place, automatically you have a brand value and you have a facelift. So people coming to Pathanamthitta will search for Aramula. After reaching Aramula, they see that on both the sides of the roads, they have beautiful handicraft shops from where they can buy this Aramula metal mirror. So when they see it from their own eyes, that what we have seen in the internet or website, when they see it from their own eyes, it really gives them a different feeling altogether, and they feel like buying one and coming back, which directly adds to the local economy of that particular place. Skill of the artisans are preserved and promoted. That is again a very important thing. During this pandemic, the artisans have faced a lot of problem, and government is trying their bit to do something for these artisans, where a lot of products that they have made, looking at these puja and very different types of vacations where tourists used to go from different parts. One of the best experience I can say, like my visit to Shanti Niketan in Vishwabharati, where I went to give a talk again on rural tourism. I was talking about Aramula Craft Village, where I could visit this Birbhum village, where I could see the tribals there come making a lot of handicrafts, and people used to go there and buy different products and see them dancing the tribal dance and all. So that it adds to the local economy and it gives them a livelihood. So coming to a bit about rural tourism in India, India has 172 designated rural tourism destinations to its credit. India has more than 6,000 villages. As Gandhiji told that India lives in villages, we see that 172 designated rural tourism destinations are there in India, and out of that 52 destinations are recommissioned. During this World Tourism Day, as UNWTO has given a theme on tourism and rural development, India should take up important steps, come up with different policies to see that how the 172 destinations that has been in the rural tourism map of India can be well tapped during this pandemic, and how especially the rural wealth that we have, or the rural projects that we have started, will take shape, and how more and more local people will get their livelihood. We talk about a STEP initiative in tourism, that's called Sustainable Tourism, Eliminating Poverty. We talk about PPT model in tourism, which is called Pro-Poor Tourism. We talk about the role of DFID and World Bank, Asian Development Bank in promoting rural areas and all. We talk about IDP projects, India Eco Development projects, where national parks and wildlife sanctuaries have been protected with the help of local community. So there are so many things that can be done, and India being a emerging country, and India having a lot of rural wealth and rural potentiality. Just imagine from 6,000 villages, 172 designated rural destinations we have, and 52 destinations are recommissioned. So we have a good scope. We have a very high scope to develop our rural tourism activities in India. and like the Puttur in Andhra Pradesh to Hodka in Gujarat, to Pipli in Odisha. Pipli is a place, you know, which is famous for applique work, and it is also again a much deserved rural tourism destination. Shamgaon in Jorhat in Assam, or Lachin in Sikkim, or Dehani in Maharashtra. So people are looking for a pristine place rather than now preferring to go to a very clumsy and busy places. So when we do talk about some of the important rural tourism benefits, we see that employment of youth. India is a country where we have a chunk of population which falls between 30 to 50, and we see that employment youth is very, very important, and that comes when you come with these sort of projects, ecotourism project, rural tourism project, agri-tourism projects, where you see that this sort of young people, young candidates can be trained by giving them capacity building programs and putting them up in rural activities. So there in a project we need skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, so different types of people we need in a project. So those looking at their qualification that they have, we can also give them some what they called first-hand information and capacity building program, some sort of a communication skill to interact with tourists, and they can be brought into mainstream. So that will really give them. So women empowerment, again, that I was talking about, where women can play a major role, like making handicrafts. I can give you one international example here, like the Masai Mara Wildlife Sanctuary in Kenya is one of the best example, where we see that how women empowerment is there. Okay, Masai women used to wear a lot of ornaments made out of beads, and they used to sell these handicrafts to the tourists when tourists used to come and visit their safari, like Masai Mara or Amboseli or Lake Nakuru or somewhere, where whenever tourists visit any of the tourism destinations in Kenya, they used to go and sell their handicrafts. They have their own resorts, which is run by women-run resort. Okay, so a lot of initiatives have been given to women, especially for African women. So as access to technology, here I would like to give the example and the dream which has been seen by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, called Pura, P-U-R-A, where he talked about providing urban amenities in rural areas, which was one of his dream of late APJ Abdul Kalam, and where access to technology is very important in rural areas. So as today we need Wi-Fi, we need internet everywhere. So so rural destinations also need to be technologically well maintained and well kept, so that the people of rural areas will also get all the facilities that the urban people are getting. But again, keeping in mind the rurality and not making it into a concrete jungle. I was also talking about indigenous knowledge, which need to be kept very properly, so that the next generation can see it and learn it. We talk about entrepreneurship and startups. So rural tourism is one area where we can have entrepreneurship and startups in a very big scale. We talk about nowadays we talk about job, rather than job seekers, you become a job givers. Why don't you start a project and you give job to 10 people? Okay, so that will give you a mental satisfaction, and even you feel like that you are one of the entrepreneurs. Okay, decrease in migration to urban areas. During this pandemic, we saw that a lot of people migrating from different big cosmopolitan and metropolitan cities to their own villages. Why? Because these people have gone from their own villages to cosmopolitan and metropolitan and urban and semi-urban places in search of good fortune. But what happened? They have to come back as they lost their job. Basically, these sort of rural tourism projects and ecotourism projects, if they have in their villages, if these youth can be provided job in their own village, so we cannot see that much migration will take place. You see that a place called Surat, where a lot of youth from Odisha goes to Surat in Gujarat in textile mills. Okay, many people are working in South. Many people used to migrate to South India as laborers and all. So these sort of things happens when you see that you are not getting sufficient jobs in your own place. So these sort of rural development projects, rural tourism activities, ecotourism activities, agri-tourism activities can really help in decreasing the migration of laborers and young people to urban areas. Education and skill development, as I was telling, that these youths need to be provided with education and skill development, and they can be provided with all sort of capacity building programs, and they can be brought to mainstream. Improvement in lifestyle. So when you are working in a firm, when you are in a service industry, automatically what you see is that it gives a different outlook to you. Okay, it helps you to rethink yourself. It helps you to reboot yourself that, okay, now I'm working for a firm and I need to have a different lifestyle. I need to look more professional, and I need to look more into my job, and I should see that what I'm doing, I should give my 100% to it. Again, cultural interaction is also one of the important benefits that we see from rural tourism activity. We see that when tourists come, there is a cultural exchange, and they learn a lot of things from both the sides. We talk about COVID-19 and rural development. We see that need for now it is the time that we need less densely populated area for safety and social distancing, and the rural tourism activity, alternative tourism, is one aspect where we see that people can travel to all these places where social distancing can be maintained. In a beach, you cannot maintain social distancing, but if you are going to a waterfall or a resort or a rural area, you can maintain the social distancing and you can enjoy. Nowadays, we have a concept of staycations, where what they called we talk about staycations, where people are going to nearby destinations in your place. So that is what we call a leisure plus vacation. It's called a staycations. Okay, so that is getting very, very popular nowadays. It shifts the burden from cities. So tourists mostly in their mind, they have a orthodox setup of going to a particular destination. Like if they are going to Delhi, they will visit Delhi, Agra, Jaipur. Okay, visiting Taj Mahal, visiting Red Fort. So these are orthodox places where people normally go. But this sort of alternative tourism will really help in shifting the burdens from the cities, so that footfalls will decrease in many cities, and it helps in preserving the culture and heritage of villages. So whenever any rural tourism project comes, automatically what will happen? The culture and heritage of that particular place will also be preserved in that way. And as I was telling, it reduces migration, and hence it helps in employability in rural areas. So that is also very important. It helps in maintaining carrying capacity. So we have different types of carrying capacity in tourism. Okay, carrying capacity, we talk about how much footprints that a particular destination can sustain in a given space. But in most of the tourism destinations, we see that there is a huge number of tourists coming to a particular destination, and it's overburdening the destination. So if you have alternative destinations, tourists will slowly move, so that there will be space for every tourist to come and enjoy. You also see that it provides authentic and unexplored experience. So when you are coming to a rural tourism destination or a village tourism destination, you see that you get a authentic and unexplored experience. So everything that you see in a village or in a rural area is authentic, and there is no artificial color to it. So whatever you see it in its own landscape. You see it in its own frame. So that is very important. And moreover, sustainability is the buzzword that we see talk in tourism today. Whatever tourism activity you do, it should be sustainably managed, and it should be sustainably keeping in mind the triple bottom line in the mind. And the most important thing is that rural tourism activities or village tourism activities takes you back to the roots. हमें हमारी जड़ों तक ले जाता है ये जो rural tourism. We talk about जड़ों means taking us back to the roots. We all are middle class people, and whenever we work anywhere, but when you go and land up in your village, there is a positive vibe that pulls you to that particular place. Yes or no? Maybe the bus stop of your near to your house, or it may be the hospital, it may be the school, it may be the natural surrounding, it may be the waterfall, it may be the orchard, or it may be your own farmland. Okay, you feel when you go and spend some time in your village, you feel like yes, I belong to this place. So that place pulls you. That's what that brings you back to the roots wherever we work. But we are connected to our roots. Similarly, whenever tourist comes, they should when they visit any rural tourism destination, they have a connection through, they feel that okay, and that novelty seeking will be there in their mind, and they used to keep on coming again and again to that particular destination, even after once they have come and go from that particular place. So these are the few examples that I was talking about, like the rasgullas of Odisha, Kandapalli toys, okay, in Tamil Nadu, which is very famous. You talk about Dharamula metal mirror. You talk about the Kullu shawl in Himachal Pradesh, which is very popular. In the middle, you have the this is the Madhubani painting of Bihar, which is very, very popular. Okay, and this is the blue pottery of Jaipur, which is just to show it in picture that how these places are important. So there is a place called Pahalo in Odisha where I have taken this photograph, where you can see number of cottage cheese rasgullas. Okay, Pahalo and Salepur rasgulla in Odisha is also very, very popular. This is the Kondapalli toys. This is the Aramula metal mirror. This is a Kullu shawl, Madhubani painting, and blue potteries of Jaipur. So this was a short discussion on rural tourism development and geographical indications. So I'll be happy if I can get some question to answer if any students have any questions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your session. There are many questions are being asked by the attendees. The first question is asked by student Akhil Binay. He is asking, what will be the future for tourism for us students in employment opportunity? Means I think they are asking about once as the COVID is going on.
I know. Actually, traveling, I would like to give it in one line. Traveling is in our DNA. Traveling is in our DNA. From birth to death, it's a travel. And traveling cannot stop in this world. No pandemic, no flood, no crisis, no disaster can stop people from traveling. And you know that a good number of people, a huge number of people are dependent on tourism industry for their survival, including we academicians. But we'll see that this pandemic, maybe once the already what they called airlines have already started, and so many international airlines are doing their services, only the holiday and leisure part is pending by, because people now as of pandemic does not goes, traveling is a necessity and it's not a leisure. Okay, so what I will suggest is that it's just a matter of time, within 6 months or maximum to maximum of 1 year, as you need to just wait till things gets normal. Once the medicines come, maybe it is expected by June, as per the source from Ministry of Health, that once things comes, things will be quite normal, and people are roaring to travel. People are roaring to travel, and people will be traveling. You can see that after 2 years, the whatever the hamper that has been happened in the tourism industry, now these 8-9 months, it will bounce back, and the tourism industry will bounce back as a phoenix bird from the fire. And definitely you have a very bright future, and those who are pursuing tourism studies, being a tourism faculty myself, tourism student of tourism myself, I feel that you confidently study tourism, and definitely things are going to be much better, and you are going to work in this wonderful travel industry soon. Thank you.
Sir, we have one more question that is asked by Vishwaraj Patra. It is, what is sustainable approach to develop niche cultural market for rural tourism destination image?
Yeah, see, when we talk about sustainable development, we say that it should be a low impact. Like, for example, we are not going for a rampant growth. Okay, we are not going for a mass activity. We are taking about niche activity. So when you see that, when you are starting a rural tourism project, you see that it should undergo so many it should undergo all the rules and regulations that been abided by like you can go for a EIA, that is called environmental impact assessment. You can see that you go for low impact constructions. Okay, you go for what they called solar energy to get your resorts lighted. Okay, you see that you can go for a organic farming at that place. Okay, if you have wind energy, why don't you take energy from wind? Okay, so and you see that there should be a proper synergy between the local people and the tourists who coming there. Okay, if you have studied about Doxy Redex Index model, okay, like apathy and antagonism, there are a few other topics. Okay, like that there should not be any confusion between community and what they called community and the local people. When we take Towson's classification of community participation, we see 3 types of community participation in it: induced participation, coercive participation, and spontaneous participation. So what type of participation, what you need when you are running a rural project? You need a spontaneous participation from community. Okay, so spontaneous participation is something where local community will be in decision making. They will be given complete freedom to take decision. They will be a part and parcel of that rural project. It's not that you are the boss and you will make others to work. So it's a synergy between both the local community and tourist combinedly that you are functioning a rural tourism project, and where it's a win-win situation for both the people. Okay, but the demand side and supply side. Okay, thank you.
Sir, we have one more question for the same person, Vishwaraj Patra. He asks, which area of Odisha agri-tourism is success?
Agri-tourism is a subset of rural tourism and alternative tourism. Agri-tourism is something, if from India, if we can say that, hope people, if you are studying about agri-tourism, the first name that you should know is Pandurang Tavre from Maharashtra, Pune, who is considered as the father of agri-tourism in India. Okay, and he is running an agri-tourism program where tourists used to come, stay in the farmland, get themselves experienced with the farm. Okay, and they will completely have a farm setup. In different places, like for example, if you are going to Israel, or if you are going to Italy, or if you are going to Australia, you can have so many places where you can go and visit wineries. Okay, wineries. So vineyards are a part of agri-tourism. Okay, you have farm tourism, you have orchard tourism. Okay, you have orchid tourism. So there are different specialization again in agri-tourism, where you go and experience from different places. So it depends upon again the climate and the local vegetation of that place. Northeast is a beautiful place where you can go for a lot of agri-tourism. Or Sikkim you can go where you can have a lot of organic farming. Sikkim is the first state where you have a lot of organic farming is there, like different types of mushroom cultivation, and also the different things are there in agri-tourism, which is again a niche area which people can go according to their own choice. And it is also gaining a lot of what they call popularity among tourists going to agri-tourism destinations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question is asked by Professor Mukunda BG. Question is, how rural community can make technology oriented?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Like nowadays, as I was talking about Dr. Kalam's dream of Pura, providing urban areas in rural areas, providing urban amenities in rural areas, where we see that it was the dream of Dr. Kalam to give urban facilities in rural areas. And we see that as India is technologically getting advanced, rural areas also should get all the technological support that is provided in urban areas, where local community, those who are getting involved in rural areas, should be trained, and they should be given all sort of capacity building program to work in these rural areas. They should be given a what they call 3 months crash course sort of in how to take care of computer, or how to book a ticket, or how to give a pass. So these sort of technical support or capacity building program can be given to local youths, and they can be brought to given training, and they can work in rural tourism destinations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question. Means a few more questions are left yet. That is asked by Mr. Prabhat Bhattacharya. The question is, how global village concept improve daily life or natural community?
Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Yes, sir. How global village concept improve daily life or natural community?
Yeah, we talk about Vasudhaiva. You are talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Okay, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world family. Okay, and tourism. Tourism is one of the medium of fostering peace in the world, and tourism has no boundaries, and people have been traveling, crisscrossing the international boundaries, even though there are so many problems within the country. But tourism is one of the medium which helps in bonding between two countries. And it is again, as I was telling, that there are countries which particularly lives on tourism only, like Singapore or Macau or Hong Kong. So these are all countries which are highly dependent on tourism only. So if tourism activities are not happening in countries which are solely dependent on tourism activity, they cannot survive. They cannot survive. So what they called tourism no doubt is one of the perfect medium for fostering peace between countries, and it helps in what they call universal peace and brotherhood. That's what my suggestion is.
Sir, question is asked by Kavita Shiva. How private endeavor works in protecting rural tourism? How private endeavors works in protecting rural tourism?
Yeah, see, most of there are many private organizations which work for rural tourism. There are so many startups which works for rural tourism projects. I think as one of the example, like Sham-e-Shahid in Gujarat, I think they have a beautiful rural tourism project. There are so many places where people have started rural eco resorts by private party for promoting rural tourism activity. Huts made out of the local huts, which are made out of husk and all. So it has been very perfectly made. So there are so many private parties in rural tourism, and but the only part is that they should see the sustainability of that particular place where they are going to start their rural project, and they can start their own rural tourism programs with the permission from the government. Okay. So rural private parties are very much active into rural tourism activity.
Sir, one more question is asked by Swati Sri Panda. Question is, what is the role of local government in a modern and changing tourism industry?
See, when we talk about local government, or we are talking about grassroots level environment. See, in Kerala, in each of our state, we have something called DTPC. That is called District Tourism Promotion Council, which is not available in other states. Okay, so it depends upon each state that how you take care of your industry. Like when I'm talking about tourism, this particular DTPC, District Tourism Promotion Council, is it's a department which functions under the collector of that particular district to take care of that particular tourism destinations of the district. Okay, so the DTPC is there. There are what they called other important like Kudumbashree is playing a major role in tourism activities nowadays. In tourism destinations, Kudumbashree catering services are there. Okay, so Kudumbashree again is one of the biggest NGO in Kerala which works for women empowerment. Okay, so Kudumbashree is there. Local self governments are there which works for different projects. Okay, so so it depends upon the state government that how far you are making good use of your local self government to work for efficient working of tourism industry. Like as I was giving one example, like DTPC is a separate body which only plays a major role in that particular district. So Kerala has 14 districts, so each district has a DTPC for taking care of each tourism destinations of each district. So in that way, they can come up with different models that how it can be divided and it can be made more more effectively, how functioning can be, how tourism functions can be taken place in each destinations. Okay. Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, sir. That last person asked a question, Dr. Tirupati Gujjati. First question is, what is the measurement to promote tourism and rural tourism development? And in this pandemic condition, how to sustain rural tourism?
Yeah, so what was the first question, ma'am?
What is the measurements to promote tourism and rural tourism development?
Actually, when we talk about measurement, there is no such measurement as such. We see that rural tourism again is we can put it under the niche marketing activity. Like when we talk about niche marketing, the people, those who are having a flair or those who are having a passion for a particular activity like rural tourism or ecotourism activity, they should come and attend or participate in rural tourism activity. Like we are not going to market rural tourism or ecotourism or farm tourism in a large scale. Okay, so that all the people will be coming and gathering in a village or a rural area. So we want people, those who are really into it, those who are really interested to go for a rural tourism activity, because you are not going to get all that facilities that you get in a hotel, like an AC air condition or a room service and all. So you may be sometimes staying by the side of a room provided by a farmer. A comfortable bed will be provided to you. Sometimes you may be stargazing. Okay, sometimes even farmers may tell that you get up early in the morning and come with us and get yourself involved in our activity. So you need to be in an experiential mode. You need to be in a sportive mode to spend time with them. Okay, you're not going for a leisure, you're going for a experiential learning. So it's moreover to get the people, those who are really interested, so that carrying capacity can be drastically decreased at rural tourism destination or alternative tourism destinations. Okay, yeah, what was the second question?
The second question, in this pandemic situation, how to sustain rural tourism?
Yeah, during this pandemic, that I was telling, that particularly this particular theme for this year World Tourism Day, tourism and rural development has itself been come up by UNWTO, is that how rural tourism activities can be promoted in our rural areas, and especially in India, as I was telling, about 172 destinations has been designated by India for rural tourism activity, and rather than people going to clumsy and crowded destinations, people should come up to rural places where I was talking about staycations and vacations and leisure activities and excursions. Okay, so these sort of things will now happen. People will start tourism in intra-regional, then coming to regional, then to national and to international. So in that way, slowly tourism will boom up in the coming days. So in that way, nowadays, you know, we have a something, a innovation I would like to tell about, a quarantine package, which is been quite popular nowadays. There is something called quarantine package. Like people going to Middle East, they have to stay in Dubai for a few days, and travel agencies are coming up with new innovations. Like it's a quarantine package where you stay in Dubai and your COVID test is also included in that quarantine package. Okay, so even travel agencies are also trying to come up with different types of packages which can give them more profit and benefit. Okay, thank you.
Sir, we have 3 people who wants to speak, ask question directly. That is, first of all, is Dr. Srimati Padmaja Desai.
Please,
So,
please.
ma'am, you can speak.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Sir, it is a well webinar. I am a Kannada. I am from Kannada University.
Yes, ma'am.
This history department lecturer whom I udhar.
Yeah, I am also a student of history, ma'am. I have done my degree, bachelor's and master's in history, and then I've done switched on to tourism.
Sir, tourism department में मैं एक क्लास लेती थी. हम्पी यूनिवर्सिटी में मेरा PhD हो गया. उधर स्टूडेंट्स को गाइड को क्लास देती थी मैं.
ओके.
आपका वेबिनार में मेरे को ये हेल्प हो गया अभी.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Once again, you organize this type of webinar, sir.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your feedback. We'll definitely try to organize one more webinar with sir, and other experts are available. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, madam. You send me a certificate.
Surely.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Welcome. Sir, we have 2 more people. One is Dr. Gujjati. He wants to speak to you. Now,
please.
Sir, you are free to speak. You can unmute and ask.
ఫస్ట్ అదే అన్నించి డెబ్బై నుంచి డెబ్బై 2 మెజర్మెంట్ తెలిసిపోతాయి కదా. డాక్యుమెంట్ ప్రకారం రాసుకొని పోతాడు అట్లా కదా సార్. ఇల్లు మొత్తము మనం ఫ్లాట్ మొత్తం కదా.
Okay, he's disconnected. Sir, we have one more participant
Yes,
named
yes.
Shohan Mukherjee.
Yeah.
He wants to speak directly. So, Shohan Mukherjee, you can ask sir directly. Okay. Okay, Shohan Mukherjee by mistakenly raised his hand. Sir, there are no more questions left for you.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was really an interesting and very important discussion we had. So now we are end of the session. I'm here now presenting the vote of thanks. Gratitude makes sense of our past, bring peace for today, and creates vision for tomorrow. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks at this moment of appreciate your presence and participation in our webinar titled Tourism and Global Rural Development, organized by Department of Tourism Studies, Indian Academy Degree College, Autonomous. Our heartfelt thanks go to the management of Indian Academy Degree College, Autonomous, and the other managing staffs for allowing us to organize this webinar. And on this occasion, this is my duty to appreciate our mentor and leader, our respected principal, Dr. E. Jerome Xavier. I express my gratitude to our principal for his vision and commitment to excellence and its execution. Sir, you have set a high benchmark for us and have given us a lot of encouragement in every program we undertake. Thank you very much, sir. And it is a great honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks at this moment. At the outset, I express our hearty thanks to Dr. Ravish Matthew, resource person of our webinar. We are grateful for the time and effort you have taken to share your insightful knowledge and views. A big thanks to you, sir, for
My privilege, my privilege and honor, my privilege and honor. Thank you so much, ma'am.
For gracing the webinar and sharing with us your intellectual treasure, innovative ideas, finding, opinion, and all the question answers with us on sustainable tourism development. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And I wish to express my gratitude to Mr. Chandan, IT Manager of Indian Academy Degree College, for providing effective technical support. We are grateful for your support. Thank you very much, sir. Events like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel starts rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for detail. We have been fortunate of every moment and dedicated faculty members and head of the department who have given their best. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the immense contribution of our dedicated faculty members. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues. Finally, thank you all for making the webinar huge success and the participants. On this point, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all, dear participants, who are with us for this session. Thank you for your cooperation and involvement in this learning process. Thank you all the participants. Finally, thank you all for making this webinar huge success. I already posted the feedback link, so you can